Welcome to another edition of the Giants Huddle podcast, brought to you by Citizens, the official bank of the New York Football Giants. I am John Schmeelk. Happy to be joined again, second-time guest, Mike Sando. He covers the NFL for The Athletic. He is a Hall of Fame voter. You can also find him on the Football GM podcast, which is part of the Athletic Football Show feed, which I promote a lot on our program, Mike, because I think you guys all do an excellent job over there.
Appreciate it. Always enjoy coming on. I think we were 2 years ago. We were here for maybe a Giants preseason game, had a good conversation, and we'll do it again today.
Absolutely. So let's start here. You're here at Giants camp. We're recording this just so we have this timestamp, because it's probably not going up until next week. This is Thursday, the Giants' second day of practice. From a national perspective, you show up to Giants camp. What are your goals? What are you trying to find out? What are you thinking? When you think Giants, where's your head at heading into 2024?
Yeah, so there's two different things for me. When I come to teams, I'm not looking at like, hey, who's the hot team this year? I want to be in that camp. I'm coming to renew relationships, create some new relationships. I'm usually working on some projects that really aren't specific to the Giants. I'm working on things around the league, things that people in the league find interesting. I find interesting, love to talk to people, get some perspectives. Now, that being said, when I dial in on the Giants, I think, we all know where they're at in the timeline of the coach. And so there was so much drama last year and intrigue over what was going on with the staff that I think we've got that component to watch, just how Daboll handles it. I mean, he's admitted and said he gets a little tempestuous out there, right?
He's a little temper.
So how does he just sort of handle this critical year, handle the staff? There's been a lot of talk about the play calling. Obviously, it looks like he's going to call the plays. But I think that's an interesting dynamic. You then layer on top of that this unique situation where the whole world got to kind of see your business on Hard Knocks, right? So now there's an awareness of what the owner was thinking on Saquon Barkley, what you could clearly tell what Joe Schoen, the GM, was thinking. It was a little less clear where the coach was on some of this stuff, but that stuff's interesting. So there's just a lot of storylines with the quarterback coming back. What the running back does for the Eagles seems like it's important, even though it has nothing to do with the Giants, right? So there's just a lot of things here to talk about that you're not going to figure out in the first week of camp, but you're definitely going to watch play out with a lot of interest.
What was your overall impression watching Hard Knocks at this recording? We're 4 episodes in. And I think what I take most out of it is that, every organization will make some good decisions and some will make mistakes. No one's 100% on their decisions in the draft or whatever. But I think you want to see a good process, right? So when you see how the Giants process works, what's your impression being a guy that talks to a lot of GMs and knows how teams function around the league?
Well, I know when you do a TV show, you want to have drama and suspense. So they're not going to put together just a bland, hey, this looks like a good process show, in my opinion. They create some drama. I don't think it's necessarily a completely accurate view into the full complexities of what happened. I was struck by this. I thought it was interesting when Joe Schoen said how much. I've only watched the first 3 episodes, so the fourth one came out. I didn't watch that one yet. I will watch it. I've just been on the road. But when he talked about the chaos of free agency and how much he enjoys the draft, because in the draft your pick comes up, and while there's stuff flying around, you just get to pick a player and you get him. It created the impression to me, not being in the building, that wow, free agency's out of your control. Like oh my gosh, Xavier McKinney got more than we thought he was going to get. Oh wow, Saquon ended up with the Eagles. Instead of creating the impression that hey, this offseason and free agency played out exactly how we thought. We were in control of it, right? That wasn't the message the TV producers sent. And it created a lot of suspense for the show. But it didn't create the impression for me that, hey, this fell exactly how we thought it was going to be. You really get the sense that in free agency, you're at the mercy of a lot of things you can't control.
Which, by the way, is as people like me and you, and you're obviously making phone calls and figuring out what's going to happen. But, we all have NFL Network on at 4 o'clock on that Monday, and we're all like, whoa. And, who thought DeAndre Swift would be the first free agent signed, for example? Stuff happens that I think fans maybe don't realize this. They're surprised. A lot of front office people end up being surprised, too.
Yeah, you don't know exactly. You don't know what's going to happen. So, I think those are... That was a part of it to me that was just interesting. And from a GM perspective of Joe saying, hey, the draft, which you think the draft is chaotic in its own way, but it comes to you a lot more than free agency does, where you're just really not sure. The other thing that struck me about it was it was just clear that, Joe wasn't super excited about investing in Saquon Barkley. I mean, you could just tell that it was like, when you tell somebody who's a valued employee, hey, go check out the market out there, then get back to us. I mean, anybody who has any employer do that to him doesn't get back to that's sort of your cue that hey, if you get something out there, you better take it.
Yeah, and I don't think it has to do with the person necessarily. I think it has more to do with the position, quite frankly. I just think at the running back position, it's not something that he valued at that top of the market type of angle.
And I think 10 out of 10 GMs up on the dais at the Sloan Analytics Conference will agree with that. It's a different equation, a harder equation when you're talking about we don't have enough good players on our team, and he's one of our 2 or 3 best players, maybe our best player. So can you ever, that's what you balance.
Yeah.
Can you afford to lose your best player just because it's not a great positional value? And so that was just really coming through to me, and obviously they played up the part where, hey, we didn't pay Daniel Jones all this money to hand off to an expensive running back was an interesting quote. But I think most people in the league feel like Daniel Jones needs to hand off to a good running back to balance out the offense to help him out, right? Who do you want the defense keying on, right? And so it's a lot easier probably to key on Daniel Jones if you don't have a dynamic back that you're worried about. And I think Barkley was one of those few backs that you worry a little bit about, certainly in the game plan, and we can debate whether it would have been a smart idea to give him all that money at this age with his injury history. It may not have been. But you're not a better team without him. And that's just the facts.
You love turf. You're good at it. So you start a turf biz. Business grows, your savings grow. Become the most celebrated name in turf. Are you ready for all that life brings?
No, 100%. And it's funny, one conversation we've had on all our shows over the past 5 months now is Saquon Barkley's been the guy. Every week a defensive coordinator comes in and he has the big red Sharpie and he's the guy you circle on the game plan, right? Who's the red Sharpie guy now? Like, is it Daniel? Is it going to be Malik Neighbors at 6? They've had more of a run-heavy offense, I think, the last couple years because of Saquon.
Yeah.
But you know Brian Dable as well as I do. I don't think that guy wants to run a run-heavy offense. I think that guy wants to throw the football.
Absolutely, and you need a healthy quarterback to do that. So
and
that's
an offensive line that can block.
And an offensive line can block. So, I thought it was, hey, I read the first day of camp coverage, and there was all kinds of motions and bells and whistles, and so maybe that's what they have to do is really. And I think some of these teams that are in this situation, like I see, Doug Peterson to some extent in Jacksonville, these offensive coaches who have delegated some, and there's been some ambiguity exactly to who's calling what. Hey, when the ship's starting to, when the ship's either going to sink or go, those guys got to take control of the offense sometimes. So is that what Dayball's going to do and try to scheme this thing up and get the absolute most out of what in the short term is certainly a different offense, and depending on how good Malik Neighbors is and replacements are for Saquon Barkley, is it a more talented one? We don't know.
Yeah, Joe Shane, I thought, was pretty clear yesterday talking about Daniel Jones and his contract that, look, this is the year that you have to find out, right? Because you have a decision to make after the season based on the contract. And from what I could tell, watching the way they've operated and talked about it this offseason, they're trying to put the best situation around Daniel that they can to give him the best chance to succeed. And let's be honest, since he's been here, they have not had a top receiving core. They have not had a top offensive line. And I don't think I would characterize either one of those groups as a top 5, top 10 group this year.
Right.
But can you get to, all right, league average? Can you get to functional to see exactly to make the most informed decision you can about your quarterback next offseason?
Yep, and they made a couple moves at guard. We saw that, and they're going to need a little bit better health probably elsewhere on the line, and that's going to be a huge key to the season. So we just don't know the answer to that yet, but we'll find out soon.
Yeah, I have not had a chance to listen to your last couple of podcasts with Randy Mueller. We had him on our show back in April. Awesome guy. You guys do a great job on the Football GM. Again, Athletic Football Show. Check it out. What's his reaction to seeing this part of what his job used to be being played out on camera on Hard Knocks the way this has been for the Giants?
Well, he wouldn't like it. I think most people wouldn't. I mean, I'm sure Joe would rather not have it, right? I mean, just nobody. That's why teams try to get out of these things, right?
Well, I think every team would avoid every version of Hard Knocks, except for maybe Jerry Jones and the Cowboys. I feel like they lead into it a little bit. Everyone else, I think, wants to avoid it.
I agree, because Jerry Jones is a showman and wants to promote the product first, really. Right. And so most teams are not set up that way. So, I think it's Randy and I did have a conversation about that component of the chaos of free agency versus and that it takes the chaos of free agency is not for everyone. That's a hard process to handle. And a lot of times the general managers, just through their training, that's not necessarily their wheelhouse, right? Or some guys come up in the draft is their thing.
Yeah, they've been to college scouts, right?
College scouts or whatever. So it's a lot on the plate of the GM. There's a lot of play on the GM who is, like I said, in many cases you're learning on the job as a GM because there's no way to, you're not going to know all the aspects of this thing.
Football season is coming, and so is the next college semester. If you need funding, a Citizens student loan could help you pay for 100% of your school certified costs. Get your rate quote in about 2 minutes at citizensbank.com/payforcollege. Citizens is a proud sponsor of the Giants Huddle podcast and the official bank of the New York Football Giants. Mike, the other big addition that we saw on Hard Knocks was the addition of Brian Burns, and I think, Giants historically, as you well know, have been a defensive front type of team. When they've been good, they've had a really good defensive front. And I don't think we know exactly what this front's going to be, but I think they do have pieces in place, whether it's Bobby Okereke at linebacker, at the edge guys, and Thibodeau and Burns, Dexter Lawrence in the middle. For the first time in a long time, this is actually a defensive front that I think can compete with Dallas and Philly in the division, which frankly, since the heyday of the Justin Tuck defensive lines, they really haven't had a group like this together in a long time.
I would agree. I think Brian Burns was one of those players that a couple years ago you would have been surprised would be moved on from. But in this league, when you have so many changes, especially in a place like Carolina, all of a sudden this guy who's young and is a really good player becomes available for probably a lower cost of return of draft choices than anyone would have thought at one time. Now you have to pay him a ton of money, but I agree. I think that was a nice addition for them. And it was interesting to me. We talked a little bit about some of the coaching turnover. I think it's important to them that the defense is better this year. I think it's important to Dayball because you had this name coordinator, and that was its own sort of story and a little bit of a sideshow at times last year.
At the end of the year, for sure.
But I think it's just such an important year, pivotal year for so many people in this organization. And I think that move of Burns, my mind went to, okay, we can't be getting worse on defense now after making this high-profile change and just where we're at. And like you said, the evolution of the offense, right? Maybe there's going to be some growing pains as Daniel Jones comes back, as the line tries to gel, already an injury on the first day of camp, as you don't have Barkley and you're looking for your identity. The best way to weather that is to not allow a lot of points.
Right.
And really to have a good defense. And we see if you have a good defense, you're not going to be that bad of a team. You have to be super bad on offense, which is possible, but hopefully, like we said, for the reasons we talked about, isn't the case again for the Giants.
A guy like Burns, to me, is an interesting evaluation, right? Because when he was coming out, I loved his pass rush repertoire. He's got every move in the book. He can rush with speed, power, he can do all that. Yet you look at his production, it's been solid, but he's only crested past 9 sacks once, right?
Yeah.
And I wonder from your perspective, and I wonder if you and Randy have talked about this at all, the fact that his team has frankly been bad for most of the time he's been there. And you're a guy that's a pass rusher, and as you well know, pass rushers have their most success when their teams have leads, other teams have to throw it, and you can get after the passer. Yeah. How much do you think his numbers, and just sack numbers specifically, because I think you go back, you watch the tape, and you still see all the same talent you've always seen. How much is his numbers, you think, depressed a little bit sack-wise because of the game flow that he's been involved in a lot, where his team's trailing in a lot of these games? Other teams don't have to, go into pass mode, and it's a little bit more difficult to rush the passer.
I would couple that also with just the energy of your team, and just how do you feel about things when you look at the way it's been there. I think it's been a hard place to come to work and really feel great about things. They've churned through coaches. There over the years. And look, Brian Burns wanted out. That's why he was one of the main reasons why he was available, is because he didn't want to be there either. Right. And so I think there's a malaise in an organization like that. On top of what you talked about, when you have a team that your players think has a chance, I think you get better play out of guys. It's just human nature. And sure, you're a professional, and I'm sure Brian Burns has played hard, but it's different when your team's good. So I would hope from a Giants standpoint that, hey, he gets just a little bump of not being in Carolina, even if the situation here has its own history that recently that hasn't been all that great. It's better, certainly, and newer for him. So you may just get a little bit of a bump from leaving Carolina and and being in a better situation. That being said, is this team going to be ahead all the time? Putting up 25 points a game? I think that would be a revelation too.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, question about the league, then I want a couple Hall of Fame questions for you. NFC East, the Eagles, I think no one would argue they probably have the most talent in the division, but we also saw how they absolutely fell apart at the end of last year in a really weird way. I still haven't quite figured out why all that happened. 2 new coordinators. Dallas, we know about all the contracts that they have to figure out. They lost almost 8 to a dozen players in the offseason. Maybe not their stars, but guys that were big parts of their starting group. So how do you view the NFC East? And then you have the Commanders, too, with the rookie quarterback, whole new regime there. How do you see this division kind of playing out over the course of the year?
So I would lean towards Dallas. I mean, I think Dallas over the last 3 seasons has the second best record in the league.
12 wins all 3 years.
Yeah, so I would start there. I think the Eagles are in a weird spot because I think their roster has some challenges. When you lose guys like Jason Kelsey and Fletcher Cox that are the glue up the middle and big
faces.
Locker room guys, remember their quarterback Jalen Hurts had a little bit of a shaky season last year. Yeah. And so I think they're real interesting with volatile storylines because I think they clearly missed Shane Steichen. He was a big part of what they did on offense.
Absolutely.
And now you're bringing in Kellen Moore, who is one of those offensive coordinators perceived to want to pass the ball a lot. But you just signed Saquon Barkley. You have a quarterback who's been best when he's sort of part of the run game and everyone's respecting that run game, and he's not having to throw it all the time.
Their read option has been the best part of their offense. No question.
Absolutely. So it wouldn't surprise me if a lot of things just took half a step back for them. Like hey, the tush push. Is that as good without Kelsey? I don't think so.
Great question.
I don't think so. And look, you give another year of teams gearing up for that. So let's just say they lose a little bit of effectiveness there. I think it's a high-pressure market in a high-pressure situation with super high expectations. So now, with bringing in a Fangio, bringing in a Kellen Moore, guys who could be head coaches or have been or maybe want to be, with Nick Sirianni, who sort of lost a little bit of the footing last year, you've got an active front office. Like I said, the media market there. Can't you just see week 2, hey, coach, Saquon only got 14 touches. You think you're going to try to get him the ball next week, and then Saquon's on a podcast that week or whatever, and then the receivers are making a ton of money, and those guys didn't get their touches this week because they went to Saquon, and now they're 2-2. I think that's a potentially volatile situation there where they're good, they're talented, but I think there's potential for that to go sideways a little bit this season. So that's why I don't feel quite as bullish on them, even though I think like I said, they're good, they're talented. But where's this headed in a year for them, I think, is an interesting question.
You're ready for a change. Payday comes early with Citizens, so go to that retreat. New You moves to the country. Now you're raising goats and launching a lifestyle brand. Are you ready for all that life brings?
Yeah, I think so too. I think it'll be very fun to watch. All right, Hall of Fame stuff. We had Bob Glauber in here doing NFL 100 for us.
My man, Bob.
Oh, Bob's the best. We love Bob. He's retired now. He's relaxed.
I talked to Bob yesterday.
I
talked to Bob yesterday. I love Bob. What do you got?
So we were talking about the Hall of Fame stuff, and the Giants have a couple guys that are in the mix here. Tom Coughlin was already in the mix last year.
Yep.
So why don't we start there? Mm-hmm. He's obviously part of the contributor category, not part of the player category. 2 Super Bowl titles. I don't think there's any doubt he's going to get in at some point. I don't know what you think about that. How do you think is looking for him in terms of the other guys that are coming up in that contributor category?
Yeah, so a couple years ago, Robert Kraft was super close to making it, almost made it in, and then hasn't the last couple of years. He's gotten close. Mike Holmgren's been very close too. Last year was a little bit of a weird year because Buddy Parker made it, a long ago coach from the Lions, but then the full committee rejected him. Which is a very unusual thing. Once you get out of that subcommittee, usually you're going to get in. Very rarely would it get kicked back, but he got kicked back, so I think he's out of the mix, which, even though it's bad for him and probably a little bit bad for the process, helps a Coughlin. Like, everyone sort of moves up a notch. Very difficult to predict, though, how it goes, and I know each one of these candidates feels like when they don't make it in a year that they were rejected, and that's not really the way it is. It's just when you get, 12 or 13 people in a room hashing it out, and then the votes get split up different ways. you're left sometimes scratching your head, like, okay, how did that happen this year? And trying to explain it almost is impossible. It's just they're all pretty good candidates. There was a year Don Coryell got in. I didn't know that was going to happen.
Right, yeah.
And it's fine. I mean, Don Coryell was, he obviously passed away, but was waiting a long time and had his own case. So I think the thing about Coughlin is I like it when coaches succeed in more than one place. There's certain candidates who just have a great, Bill Belichick with the Patriots. It's an amazing run with one team, and he gets in. But some of these guys who go to more than one team, I really hold that in high regard. I think it's hard to win in multiple places.
Not the fact that he built Jacksonville from scratch. That was an expansion team.
And turn places. So that's why I think Coughlin, I think Mike Holmgren was able to do that. Go to Green Bay, go to Seattle, your Super Bowl team, both places. Even Don Coryell was knocked for not winning a Super Bowl, but went to the Cardinals and they were horrible, and then had them winning a ton of games with a great offense, and then went to the Chargers, who were horrible, and had them winning a ton of games with a record-setting offense. To me, that's really a great way to measure some of these coaches, because it's hard. It's hard to turn places, and it's hard to also know who gets the credit. Is it the quarterback? Is it the defense? Is it how much is the head coach? But when the head coach drives success more than one place, I really pay attention.
And then it didn't end well, but he eventually went back to Jacksonville, was a GM there, and he got that team within a play or two from a Super Bowl in the AFC Championship game that year.
That's an interesting one, because I think most people would not perceive that to have been a positive experience for him. And there was some other stuff that went on there in terms of, sort of the old school approach with the players, and Jalen Ramsey got.
And in fairness, the year after that, the team fell off a cliff, and there were salary cap issues.
I don't really look at when I look at Coughlin's candidacy, I don't really look at the second Jacksonville stint as a good or bad. I just sort of put it off to the side. I think we're evaluating him as a coach.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
With these places, so yeah.
All right, then how about finally Eli Manning? He's coming up here. How do you think that conversation's going to go? I imagine it's going to be polarizing. You have playoff success versus regular season success, and everything that goes along with it.
It's a really fascinating one. It's because he played a really long time and was good, and won 2 Super Bowls playing lights out ball against good, really top teams.
How important are those 8 games in the playoffs, right?
Hugely important. This is a little bit of a cynical take, but Joe Flacco did it for 1 playoffs. Eli Manning did it for 2. The difference between the rest of the resumes is probably not as great as you think.
I think Eli did it for a little bit longer.
Eli did it for a little bit longer, but
I'm with you on that. Yeah, I do.
But how do we put that into like to me? Eli's definitely got a better case than like a Jim Plunkett, who won 2 with the Raiders, but then was really didn't play a lot early in his career, was hurt, sort of and then was on these just amazing teams stacked with Hall of Famers. But I also never felt like he was just a year in, year out, top 3, top 5 quarterback in the league.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
It's a
top 10, but not top 3.
But, you wouldn't have put him in there with the Rodgerses and Breeze won 1 Super Bowl, but I think most people would say Breeze was really driving an amazing offense.
Eli had that one amazing offensive year in 11. That was the one year that really stood out, but he wasn't consistently in that top 3
Here's what he's got going for him, though.
That.
Played a long time, 2 Super Bowls, huge stage, great last name. Playing for the Giants, I think that stuff helps. I think if his last name was Jones and he was playing for Jacksonville and they won a couple, it can be harder to build a case or have the momentum around him.
And now he's also everywhere in the media, by the way, and people see his face all the time,
absolutely.
which also doesn't hurt.
I think it helps a lot of these guys. I think it helped Bill Cowher and Jimmy Johnson
Kurt
to be on
Warner,
TV.
Probably, right? Terrell Davis.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we talked about a couple of these other guys like those coaches, a Cowher and Jimmy Johnson on TV versus like a Mike Holmgren or a Tom Coughlin, who have kind of gone their own way. They're not on TV all the time.
Yeah, Tom Coughlin, not the TV analyst type.
No, I think that stuff. I think it affects. It doesn't make or break a guy getting in. Those guys are all going to get in, but I think it can help someone feel relevant sooner. Whereas someone else, you have to sort of build a case around. Right, and an awareness can arise over time to where somebody gets in deservedly so. I think Eli Manning bypasses a lot of that. Everyone knows it's recent, so I'm fascinated. I don't know. I don't really have a sense for how it's going to go. Is it going to be everyone's on board? Is there someone going to push back really hard? I don't know. I think it'll be fun though.
All right, Mike. Feel free to promote anything that you're writing, you're getting ready, or you have up on The Athletic. Tell the folks what you're up to.
Well, you can always count on the quarterback tiers to come out, but
What does that do?
I think that's going to be coming out in August. I can say that, but I don't know, or if I don't know if I even know the exact date. But it's going a little bit later this year. Sometimes it would have already run by now, but
You're doing it after your camp tour?
Yes, it'll probably run after my camp tour.
Nice. Where else are you going, by the way?
So I've got, I was at the Patriots yesterday. I do Giants today, Jets tomorrow, and then I'm going to go to the Eagles, and then I'm going to go to the Commanders and the Ravens, and then I'm going to head back home. Sometimes I go out on the road for 2 weeks. This year I'm doing one. I love to get on the road. I went to a bunch of teams during June camps.
Oh, nice.
Too.
Good.
Probably 6 or 7 teams then. So I love being on the road, but you're not as productive, like as far as like getting actual work done. So
of course.
I love doing this, and I'm gonna get back in my office and get some stuff written.
And then also take your time to do things like this, so you're not getting your work done either. Do you have any Egypt-themed shirts ready for Jets camp tomorrow? Do you have any pyramids going, a sphinx maybe, something like that? No.
I don't. I think that's probably good that I don't.
I think you're probably right. Mike, good stuff, man. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
Appreciate it.
Mike Sando on the Giants Huddle podcast, brought to you by Citizens, the official bank of the Giants. We'll see you next time, everybody.